Alright guys, so I think last night we had a pretty productive class going through V-Ray for Rhino, but I wanted to create this video. I'm going to move through things pretty quickly in this video, but this is for those who either fell behind during class or weren't in class. This is what I'd like you to do with your Rhino models and using V-Ray with Rhino to create some rendering. So essentially what we have here is a very simple model. If I switch this to shaded view, you'll see I have a couple different rings, different surfaces to create the site model. This has a little bit of topography change in it just to give the rendering some depth. And I created a little pond here, again, just to give the rendering a little more life than what we were doing in class. In class we were using a pretty flat site model. But this is going to be assignment 3, is going to be to produce a rendering using Rhino with V-Ray. So I'm going to get into things. When you have V-Ray as a plugin loaded into Rhino, if you don't have a V-Ray toolbar, what you can do is you can go to Tools, Options, and then go to Toolbars, and you should have V-Ray for Rhino, and then just select this V-Ray all, click OK, and then you should get a V-Ray toolbar, and you can dock this anywhere. You can dock this on the side, up top, on the left side. I dock it up top. It's easier for me. So we have our Rhino model. We have everything on separate layers. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the V-Ray toolbar, and I'm going to open up the asset editor window. So V-Ray asset editor. And in here, I have a couple materials loaded in, but what you're going to see is you have materials, you have a light bulb for your lights that you put in for V-Ray, you have geometries, and you have textures tab. This is your render engine. Interactive render has the play button on it, and this is the interactive render window. I don't have an interactive rendering going right now, so that's not going to show anything. But the whole idea is to take a very simple Rhino model and hopefully get it turned into something looking like this. Like this has a little more life in it, kind of sitting in a nice field. So let's jump into it. What I'm going to do is, for the sake of speed, in my rendered model here, I already have my building materials set up, but I'll show you how to apply materials and map materials with the site. So the first thing I'm going to do, you have the KS Cosmos browser next to the V-Ray asset editor. This is an importer from everything online from the Chaos server. I'm just going to go to materials, and for now I'm just going to type in grass. And I already have them downloaded. If you don't have them downloaded yet, make sure you click download, the blue button, and then once it's downloaded, you'll have a blue check mark, and then you can use the green import button to import model in. I'm going to do grass, and I'm going to do water, because I have some water in here. And here we go, so I have this water. I'm going to push that into my model. Okay. So once you have materials pushed in, you can go into the V-Ray asset editor, go to your materials list, click on what you want to apply, and right-click, apply to layer, and then apply it to the layer that you want to put the grass on. Okay, so my grass comes in pretty nice. Water, I'm going to do the same thing, apply to layer, water. Okay, so that just gives me a clear water material. For most of you, when you bring in materials the first time, they're not going to come in at the right scale, so we have to map the materials. So what you do here is you select the material you want to map. So for me, I'm going to do multiple. I'm going to select all my rings where I put the grass. And under your properties tab in Rhino, you should have something called texture mapping now available to select. Once you have objects selected, you can select texture mapping. And the way we map these textures is we use a box mapping, apply box mapping. So we're going to select that. It's going to say first corner of base bounding box. So I'm just going to draw the first corner of my base of my box anywhere. And let's say I want this to read 50 foot by 50 foot by 50 foot texture. You type in 50 foot, 50 foot, 50 foot. Top, continue clicking enter, capped, yes, yes, enter, and you'll see the material will change in size. So you can do that for all your materials once you import them and apply them to the layers. Same thing with your concrete for your pavilions. Make sure you go in and go to texture mapping, apply box mapping, and set the texture to the scale you want. Once that's done, let's say I don't like 50, I can come down here to this XYZ size box and I can lock it so that everything moves at the same rate. And I can switch that back to 25 feet. You'll see they all change to 25, and the texture has gone a little smaller. So I might even want this a little smaller, maybe 20. That's better for me. That's good. Okay. So now that I have materials set up, what I want to do is I want to drop down, set my view to one of my set views for the renderings, and here we go. This is going to be the scene, the shot of the scene that you see here, right? Same deal. So from this view, I'm going to go to the V-Ray Asset Editor window, and I'm going to drop down for the interactive renderer. You can also do that by clicking right here, starts an interactive render. So we'll do it that way actually. We'll say start interactive render, and you'll see the V-Ray frame buffer appears. And for now you should have materials with basically no sky and your site model. Alright, so I have my water, I have my grass, I have my materials in my building. So I'm going to show you guys something about bump maps really quick with the materials themselves. So for me, let's say I want this water to be a little more interrupted. I'm going to select water. I'm going to pop out on the right side of my V-Ray Asset Editor here, and I have all my water properties. So I can change the reflection, I can change the refraction, the color of it, everything like that. So maybe I want this to be a little deeper blue of a water. I'll change the color of it there. It's not going to do much yet because I don't have a sky in. But then on bump map, I have bump map checked on, right? So if I check off bump map, it just looks like a piece of glass basically. There's no ripples in the water. So if I click on bump map, it's going to be at 0.01 to start. So it's basically going to be nothing. And I can start to bring that upwards, so 0.15, you see it's got a little more ripple in it. I want the water to reflect this pretty much. This is in a pretty serene scene, so I don't think we're going to have to play with the bump of the water too much, but that's how you do bump maps. So same thing for the grass. You can turn on the bump map, and you can kind of up the bump a little bit if you want it to look a little more lively. But what we're going to do for grass and vegetation and all that is going to come a little later in this scene. So the grass material for your site really just lays the groundwork, but that'll be covered up later. Alright, so in my V-Ray frame buffer here, I just have this gray sky with some lights in it. If I want to add a sky in using V-Ray, using the Chaos Cosmos HDRIs that they have, there's a couple steps that we got to go through. So I'm going to open up Cosmos. I'm going to drop down to HDRIs, okay, and for me I'm going to choose an evening one, so I already have one loaded in, and then I'm going to download again and import my HDRI in. So I have a sunset 028. I'm going to go into my VR Asset Editor, and you will see under textures, it's a texture, you have it right there, sunset 028, okay, so I can use that. The way HDRIs work is they're essentially a big dome that goes over your model. So what we're going to do is we're going to place a dome light from the light menu on the V-Ray toolbar. We're going to place a dome light. So just select dome light, place it anywhere in your scene. It won't be visible. It's going to ask you to put a texture in. We downloaded one, so we can cancel this window. And then essentially what we have to do is we have to go into the Asset Editor again and go to our Lights tab and find our dome light. So dome light, select that, okay, and then go back to the textures, right? So this is just a basic white dome light right now, but we can apply a texture into the dome. So what we're going to do is we're going to click and drag our HDRI into the texture box. We're going to paste it as an instance, and then we're going to turn it on. So once that's checked on, you'll see have a texture map for your dome light. I think this is probably going to be a little too intense, so I'm going to turn this down to like a 0.3. And now when you open up your frame buffer, you should see a nice sky in there. Alright, so the next step in this process is going to be to add some grass. So we're going to add some lively grasses into our scene here. And in this image here, what you'll notice is all of these models, they're actual little models that come in. They're all individually placed, but we can do it in a pretty efficient way by using what's called a scatter plane. So V-Ray is a cool tool where you can import several different types of models in. It can be models of people, models of vegetation, of anything, and you can scatter them about across a plane at a random value. So I'm going to start with this inner ring, actually. Yeah, I'm going to start with this inner ring here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into that V-Ray toolbar, and right here, this tool right here, make scatter host from selection. So I'm just going to select that, make scatter host from selection, and now I have a scatter host. So if I go into my objects, my geometries, right there I have scatter. Okay. So what it's asking for the scatter is it's asking us to add guests into the scatter. So what do we want to scatter along this surface? Well, we need to import them first. So what we're going to do, KS Cosmos browser, I'm going to go under models, 3D models, and I'm going to go to vegetation, grass and ground cover, and I'm going to scroll all the way down to, I have a few that I have loaded in already, and I think they're good for covering a lot of ground. Okay, here we go. So you have grass plants, 9119, sow thistles grass, and sow thistles grass. So I'm going to import these in, and what you're going to do is you're going to click that green button, and then you're going to left click it into Rhino, it'll place it, and then click escape on your keyboard to bring you back to the Cosmos, and click escape again, and click escape. Click escape. Click escape. Okay. So now I have my three objects that I'm going to scatter along this surface. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to that V-Ray asset editor, and I'm going to go to the scatter, and make sure you have nothing selected in your Rhino model at this moment, and click add guests, and then select those three objects. Click enter, and what you'll notice is they've now scattered all along the surface here in Rhino. Let's see what that looks like in a rendering. So let's set this view back here, and let's go to our frame buffer, and there you go. You see they're starting to scatter about. Not quite as dense as we'd like it to be, but we can fix that. So in our asset editor, while we have our scatter selected, this max count limit here, if you scroll down a little bit, max count limit, just turn that up to the max. That's always turned. And then here, down below that, you can go to instances count. So instances count is 1,000 right now. I might turn that up to like 30,000 and just see what that looks like when we go back into our rendering. Okay. So we'll go back into our frame buffer, and wow, there you go. So you have a whole field of grasses, flowers, all those kinds of things surrounding your site. And so I'm kind of liking the mix of white and yellow right now. Maybe I'd like to see a little more yellow. So I'm not sure which one that is, but you can change the probability of a certain object showing up. So I'm going to give it a 2-to-1 probability for the yellow flowers to the white. I'll show back up in here. You'll see now that there's more yellow popping up in there than there was previously. Maybe I'll turn the other one down to 0.5 and the grass plants up to like 3 almost. Let's see what that does. Okay, that changed it a decent amount. Let's turn this down to 1. Let's just turn this down to like 20,000. So getting the scatters right and getting them to look right is always a bit of playing around with it. Kind of do trial and error until you get what you're looking for. And also, what's interesting is, let's say you like the distribution, but you'd rather see it in a different version. There's a line here that says seed, and you can change the seed value, and it'll change the distribution and how it looks across the board. All right, so let's say I didn't want the white flowers at all. I could probably just remove them. That was the yellow ones. Or if I just want the grass, you can just remove things until you get what you want. So for me right now, I'm going to go back and add guests again. I'm going to reset my view. Set that to 1 and 1. All right, so that's good. Okay, next scatter plane, we're going to have our inner loop. I made sure to split my surface around my building so that nothing scatters through the building in the rendering here. So all I did was I drew a polyline around my building in a top view, and then I extruded it, and I did a split command using that extruded object that kind of creates a border around the building. And so now I can use this object as a scatter object. So I'm going to select it, I'm going to make scatter object, and I'm going to use the same things actually. So I'm going to go in to the asset editor, I'm going to go to scatter 1, so that's the new one. Make sure I have nothing selected in my Rhino model. I'm going to add guests. I'm going to click enter. And I'm going to and set my view. I'm going to open up the renderer. Again, just not enough coverage. So we're going to turn up our max count limit on scatter 2. We're going to turn up our instances count to like 8,000. Okay? And then the angle 2 down here, you might see some things flipping up. Like, see here, this is turned up, and these are turned up for some reason. Down here, slope limitation local, angle to 180. Just do 0 for that. Put 0 for that, and then you'll see that nothing is on its side anymore. It's all laying flat. So now we're starting to build this nice field around our pavilions, around a little pond, right? This edge of the pond, I want to make that a scatter object as well. What I'm going to do with this one is I'm only going to add the dark green grass to this one. So I'm going to select it. I'm going to say create scatter object. And same deal here again. I'm going to go into the V-Ray asset editor. And this time I'm going to go to scatter 2. Say add guests. Nothing in my Rhino model selected. Add guests. Enter. enter. Okay, there you go. Set view, back to my rendering. And what you'll notice now is you kind of have an edge of grass that goes down into the pond. And so there we go. We have grasses that kind of tilt over the edge into the pond. I don't love that these are kind of floating like this. You could fix that up with doing angles and whatnot. I'm not going to get too into the weeds on that right now. The last thing I want to show for this video is how to scatter trees about the far edge surface. So it's the same process. I'm going to select the far edge surface. I'm going to say scatter object. And I'm going to go into Cosmos, and I'm going to go to vegetation, trees, and I have some downloaded already, and this is the same process again. So we're just going to import and place an object, click escape on our keyboard, import, place the object, escape, import, place the object, escape. Now a couple more. I'd like to add this one in, and I'd like to add in this one. Okay. So now that I have those imported, same thing, view your asset editor, scatter number 3, deselect everything in my Rhino model, and add guests. So if you want to add short shrubs and bushes and that kind of stuff too, I'm going to add all these trees plus all these grasses so that it's just kind of continuous. And there you go. You see them all pop up now. Okay, we can go back to our rendered view, set view, V-Ray 2.4 sample, open up our IPR, and there you go. You have some trees about there. Obviously, it's not dense enough, right? So we're going to up our max count limit, instances count. Let's try 5,000. See what happens. There you go. You have more of a ring of trees now. I'd like to only see this tall one, probably a third of the amount that I see the other trees. So I'm going to put in a third of a probability for that one. Right, and that's not so bad. So you can play around with the seed value on that. I think this is starting to look pretty nice. This is as far as we got in class. So we'll get into more next week, but otherwise if you have any questions, email me.